The Locked On Phillies today. We start our 2022 season player reviews and we discuss a little bit more about some of the free agents available to the Philadelphia Phillies this offseason. All of that on today's Locked On Phillies.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is indeed Locked On Phillies. I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I appreciate the continued support throughout the 2022 MLB season and that great postseason run the Phillies went on. I, of course, am your host, Connor Thomas. I've been doing this for, hosting Locked On Phillies since February now, so coming up on a year and a little bit. And been talking sports on 97.5 The Fanatic for years, college baseball player, former semi-pro baseball player. So happy to be here with you as your host. Now, let's jump into something we're going to be doing over the next couple weeks. In addition to all of the free agent news, in addition to all of the contract stuff and the releases and the re-signing and everything like that, in addition to looking forward to 2023, we're going to start to look back towards the 2022 season and do some player reviews for their performance for the 2022 season. Now, unless I let you guys know otherwise, every day from here on, we're going to be doing 2 player reviews, and we're going to be doing a third segment that's either free agent or re-signing or trade or the news of the day, things like that. But we're going to start knocking out some of these player reviews so you can hear my thoughts on how every single player on the Philadelphia Phillies performed over the 2022 season. We're just going to go down their baseball reference list and go in that order. That way I can keep track of it easy enough as far as how these players performed in the 2022 season. So without further ado, let's start with the player listed first on the 2022 Phillies baseball reference page, and that's catcher JT Realmuto. Now, JT Realmuto is age 31 season. You could argue he was the MVP of this team. Well, for the regular season. And you know what? It's funny. It kind of feels forgotten how good he was this year because of the playoff run and Bryce Harper coming on incredibly strong in October and even November, having one of the best individual off seasons in baseball history. But JT's numbers were incredible this year. Absolutely unreal. He batted .276. He only struck out 119 times, which, I mean, ideally you'd like to see that down a little bit more, but that's not bad comparable to where the average major leaguer is. He had 22 home runs. He had 84 RBI, slugged .478, OPS .820. I mean, just really, really good work. Behind the dish, the best defensive catcher in baseball. He brought home the National League Gold Glove at the position of catcher. Really, really good work there. 139 hits for his career. That's, let's see, 1, 2, 3. That's the 4th most of his career in his 9 years he's been playing. Pretty solid there. I just look at this and I say, well, that's the JT Realmuto season. That's what you should get from him until he starts declining. And you look at his age, he's a 31-year-old catcher now. So the decline is coming. It might be this next year. It might be 2 years from now. Who knows? But there's only so many Yadier Molinas out there who play forever. And even Yadier Molina, we saw that he started dropping off near the end of his career. He was there because he was a legend and because he played fundamentally well and because he was a leader. But you look at Yadi and what he wasn't a guy that really should have been starting consistently at the major league level this past season. It was probably his last season. Now, when does JT turn into that guy? It's a great question, and nobody knows for sure. The Phillies are hoping it's after the contract that they signed him to is done. But right now, you're looking at the best catcher in baseball. So we're going to go through, and I'm going to keep track of this in my notes. So I'm going to make sure I have this typed out or written down for everybody out there. But we're going to talk about their basically offense and defense for position players, For the pitchers, we can only talk about their performance on the mound. But everything like that, we'll break that stuff down. And then I'm going to give each player an overall grade for the 2022 season. And another thing I want to do, if applicable, because not all of them have it, but we're going to talk about the big moment for this player in the 2022 season. And we know what JT's is, right? It's got to be the biggest moment on the biggest stage, the extra inning home run in Game 1 of the World Series to breathe life into the Philadelphia Phillies. They're down 5-0 to Justin Verlander. I don't know why I wanted to call him David Verlander there. That's not even a person. They were down 5-0 to Justin Verlander and the Houston Astros in Game 1 in Houston. They go to extras, and JT Realmuto hits a huge home run to put the Philadelphia Phillies up 1 and help them win Game 1, along with a great catch by Nick Castellanos out there in right field. So that was his seminal moment of his season, with a lot of great moments from JT, but that was the one that that we'll always remember about this 2022 run from him. And throwing base runners out like they're basically walking the base. Absolutely incredible. So JT, the best defensive catcher in baseball, not just in the National League. Now, of course, Gold Glove, you can only get it for the National League, and you're not really going to get a platinum glove as a catcher very often, especially when guys like Nolan Arenado exist. But well-deserving Gold Glove, one of the best throwers out of base runners, one of the best velocities on throws down to second base of any catcher, the best pop time in Major League Baseball, the best pop time on the planet probably. So incredible work by JT back there. The defense, we absolutely know what he's going to be. A plus defense. But the grade I'm only giving really is the overarching grade. Offensively, what would I like to see different from JT? You could say consistency, because he was really quiet at the start of the year. But he finished the season with 6.5 WAR. That's really, really good, especially for a catcher. And I mean, offensively, you don't normally get that much from the catcher's position. I look at the numbers he put up at 276, and I can't expect more batting average, especially in the modern game. And that's an above average for baseball in 2022. 2022. I'm a lot of 22s. 22 home runs, above average for a catcher. 84 RBIs, above average for a catcher. 21 stolen bases, above average for a catcher. And the stolen base numbers, because that may be the highest number of his career. Yeah, it easily is. His previous high was 13 last year when he was an all-star. And frankly, it's crazy to compare these numbers to last year's numbers and think he wasn't an all-star this year. Last year, in his all-star year in 2021, he had a lower batting average. He had 5 less home runs. He had 1 less double. He had 1 less triple. He had 14 less hits. I mean, he was significantly better this year. The only issue was he was rough early and then just so good late. And the honorable mention, by the way, as I'm going through that I think about for JT Realmuto's great moments this year. Of course, we also got to mention the inside the park home run against the Atlanta Braves. Absolutely incredible. Just an electric moment where Ronald Acuna in right field didn't even move, and JT Realmuto rounds the bases at Citizens Bank Park for an inside the park home run. First by a catcher in Major League Baseball playoff history. Just incredible. So shout out to JT Realmuto for being probably the team MVP of the regular season this year, being really good in the playoff run, and being a guy that you can count on in 2023. And his overall grade in 2022, just because of the consistency, I can't give him the A plus, but I will give him the first A that we'll hand out for the 2022 player review. So that's the JT Realmuto season in review. Coming up next, the next guy down on the Baseball Reference page, well, a little bit tougher to assign a grade. One of the more controversial players on the Philadelphia Phillies. So I'll give you a hint. We're heading over to first base. We'll discuss Rhys Hoskins next on Locked On Phillies. Okay, let me tell you about my friends over at Simply Safe. They're my really good friends, and you know why. You've heard me talk about Simply Safe before. Let me tell you, of course, what they've got for you. I'm going to tell you how you can order the #1 rated Simply Safe home security system, and we'll 50% off It's their biggest offer of the year, and you won't want to miss it. But here's what's more important than saving money. It's security. It's safety. It's peace of mind. I'll tell you the story again if you haven't heard it. A couple years back, my mom's house got broken into. She lives over in Jersey in our childhood home. My brother and I are moved out now. We both live in Philly, here in Center City, and she was luckily not home, but she lives all alone. And once someone breaks into your house, your sense of safety in your home, it feels like it's shattered, just like the window they used to get in. So what did we do? Well, the first thing we did was we called Simply Safe, and we set her up with all of the door sensors, window sensors, cameras, everything. They've got 24/7 people ready to go, professional monitoring agents. Use the Fast Protect technology. It's exclusively from Simply Safe, so they can capture critical evidence and verify that the threat is real, not like a baseball going through the back window. No, it's someone actually trying to break in. I don't know what better endorsement I could give for a product than saying I trust my mom's life with these people. And that's how I feel about our friends over at Simply Safe. They're amazing. They give me peace of mind. They give my mom peace of mind. That's what really matters. But also, don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system I recommend. Get 50% off any new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com/lockedonMLB. It's their biggest discount of the year. Don't wait on it. That's simplysafe.com/lockedonMLB. Because, folks, I'll tell you again, there's no safe like Simply Safe. All right, it's time for our second player review of the 2022 season. We're discussing Rhys Hoskins. Yeah, this is going to get interesting. Rhys Hoskins had a strange 2022 season. There were points where he looked like the best hitter on the planet. There were points where he looked like he shouldn't be in Major League Baseball. And the defense will always be a question. The offense will always be streaky. Let's look at the numbers when it comes to the Phillies first baseman and how he performed in 2022 in what could be his penultimate or even his final season as the Philadelphia Phillies first baseman. Now, he batted .246. Not bad if you're going to add some power, and he did hit 30 home runs. I can't get mad at those numbers in a vacuum. Now, here's where I will say he needs to be a little bit better. The strikeouts for 2022, 169 strikeouts, the second most of his career, trailing only 2019. Now, 2019, he only batted .226 while he hit, 29 home runs. And this year, he upped that to .246 and hit 30 home runs. So you get away with strikeouts a little bit more when you have that or an average. Just he's a really tough guy to have in the 2 spot. I think if Rhys Hoskins was batting 4th or 5th and put up these numbers, we would feel a lot more comfortable about what he did this season. But from the 2 hole, as one of your guys that's supposed to set the table for Bryce Harper and your other power hitters, and not that Rhys isn't a power hitter, but that's what the 2 hole is supposed to be. I don't know. I don't love the numbers. 246, an OBP of 332, slugging 462, OPS 794. I'd like to see all of those higher and more consistent. Here's what I'll say for Rhys. And he had 33 doubles this year. I already told you the 30 home runs, 145 hits, the most of his career. Rhys is a strange player offensively that you kind of have to deal with, right? Basically, the way that Rhys Hoskins works is he's going to give you 2.5 months out of a 6-month baseball season where he's absolutely on fire, where he's going to hit like 10 home runs in a month, like 330, and just be absolutely devastating at the plate. Then the rest of the time, he's going to look stinks. There are plenty of players out there that play first base, or any position for that matter, that seem like they stink all the time. Rhys Hoskins is not a bad baseball player. What he is very streaky. And if you decide that's the way you want to go, you're going to have to live with it. A guy like Bryce Harper is consistent. A guy like Gene Segura, consistency. A guy like JT Realmuto, now rough start to the year. Overall, normally he's a really consistent baseball player. Rhys Hoskins is not a consistent baseball player. But at his peak, he might be the second best hitter on this team behind Bryce Harper. So that's kind of what you got to live with if you're going to keep playing him at first base or having him on this team in general if he moves to DH or whatever. So offensively, he's not a perfect player. But if you're willing to accept that, you're going to get some really damn good first base, damn good at bats out of Rhys Hoskins. Let's flip to the defensive side of the ball, though. He was by far and away the worst defensive player on this team. Points in the playoffs where he's dropping throws directly to his chest. You don't see anyone at the major league level ever do that. In the final game of the World Series, he had a play coming down the first base line where he could have made a play at home. Just completely didn't catch the ball. Really cost the Phillies in that spot. He's terrible defensively. Probably the worst defensive first baseman in baseball. And that's unacceptable for a team with the aspirations that the Philadelphia Phillies have. He's going to have to get better, or he's going to have to DH, and they're going to have to play somebody else at first base. You can't have a guy that's a complete liability at first base like that and expect to win at the highest level. And it cost them in the playoffs. It's a magical run. It's a miracle that didn't cost them sooner, but just seemed to get away with mistakes left and right through the first 3 rounds of the playoffs, the wild card series, the divisional, the championship series. It was just lucky that some of the mistakes happened at the time that they did, where it wasn't too serious, but he's not a guy you trust defensively at all over first base. And while Alec Boehm, who was basically the mirror image of Rhys Hoskins, you flip the infield, and Boehm is the same guy at the hot corner as Rhys Hoskins is at first. Well, Boehm this year, he significantly improved defensively to the point where you feel comfortable with him at third base now. Hoskins, I can't say the same for. If he even gave you average defense at first base, he'd be a lock for the Phillies to want to try and re-sign at any price. But he doesn't give you defense. So I don't know how you can after the 2023 season when he's finally eligible for free agency. I know we're just evaluating the player for 2022, and his numbers overall offensively look like a solid power hitting first baseman in the modern age. But that defense keeps coming back to haunt me and haunt the Phillies and haunt you out there listening who watched them all of this year. So let's combine the two. And Rhys Hoskins this year, got to take the playoffs into account where he really disappeared to at points, especially in the World Series. But the playoffs were the perfect microcosm of Rhys Hoskins' season, right? The biggest moment of the year was the bat spike, getting everyone fired up. It's the first game back at Citizens Bank Park in the playoffs since 2011. And they come in, and Bryson Stott puts together a great at bat to go ahead and score Brandon Marsh and make the game 1-0 in favor of the Philadelphia Phillies. And then Rhys Hoskins comes up and breaks it open by mashing one to left field off Spencer Strider. Spikes the bat, throws his hands up. It was amazing. That may be the moment of the playoff run visually. I know there were bigger moments like Bryce's home run in Game 5 of the NLCS, but he didn't really celebrate it like that. It was kind of more of the moment on the field. Rhys's theatrics made that moment special. So he did have moments, but then he also disappeared outside of like that 3 home runs in 2-game stretch against Atlanta. I'm going to give Rhys Hoskins a C+ for the 2022 season. He's streaky. And he's slightly above average when you bring him in as a compare. Way above average offensively, way below average defensively. And C+ for 2022. Now, give you an idea of who we're doing tomorrow. Tomorrow, we'll move on to the next 2 players for the Philadelphia Phillies player reviews. And according to Baseball Reference, it's going to be the middle infield guys. We'll be talking Gene Segura and Bryson Stott on tomorrow's episode. Coming up next, as we wrap up, though, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about a guy I omitted from yesterday's program to talk about with the shortstop situation, free agent-wise, and how he fits in. We'll discuss that coming up next as X-Man from up there in Massachusetts. Well, we'll see how he fits into the Phillies' plans. That coming up next as we wrap up Locked On Phillies. Yes, of course, I'm talking about Xander Bogaerts. Now, Bogaerts he's 30. So he's a guy that you're looking at as a little bit older than the options of Correa, who's 28, Dansby Swanson, who's 28, and then you're looking at Trey Turner, of course, who's the youngest of the bunch. But even though he's the oldest, well, Xander Bogaerts may be the best overall hitter. He's the only one over 300 this past season. And he's also got a little bit of the home run pop. We've seen him hit some big home runs for the Boston Red Sox. Now, his defense is solid. He doesn't quite have the range that these other guys do, the Trey Turner, Carlos Correa, Dansby Swanson has, but he can play a solid shortstop at the major league level for sure. Definitely has the arm to handle the shortstop responsibilities, and he deserves to be in that conversation. Now, the fact that he's 30, I feel like he's a little bit lower down on the list than a Trey Turner, than a Carlos Correa, than a Dansby Swanson, but we talked about how if the shortstop market goes crazy and the Phillies can't get one of these top guys, and it comes down to, hey, just Xander Bogaerts is available. And Xander Bogaerts a nice player. I mean, when you can get a shortstop that's going to hit you about 20 home runs every year and bat around 300 every year, that's really, really good. I don't know if you can hit him lead off like you could with Trey Turner or Dansby Swanson or even Carlos Correa, but he would be a great addition to this team if it comes to that. And it could be one of those situations where if some of the top guys don't work out, the Phillies go and throw the bag at Xander Bogaerts because they need to upgrade at the position. So he's another guy to look at. I put him 4 of the 4 options we've gone through so far, with Turner being 1, Swanson being 2, Correa 3, and then you're looking at Xander Bogaerts 4. That's how I would personally rank them as far as fit with the Phillies and willingness to go sign those guys. But he's in that conversation. I neglected to bring him up yesterday, so I apologize for that. But certainly someone else worth considering for the Philadelphia Phillies to bring in to play shortstop. And he's a guy that has that that connection to Dave Dombrowski from his time in Boston with the Red Sox. So, hey, we'll see how that plays out. The connections there are important. So that's another guy to keep your eye on as we head into an interesting free agent time. So Xander Bogaerts, another name at shortstop to keep an eye on. Now, that's all for today's Locked On Phillies. I want to thank you for making Locked On Phillies your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. And make your next listen Locked On Sports today. Got the biggest news from sports around the world, MLB, NHL, NFL, everything like that. Who am I missing? NBA, NHL, MLB, NFL. Yeah, that's all of them. Go ahead and check out the latest big news in the world of sports. Check out Locked On Sports Today, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Thank you to the continued support on our YouTube page. Continue to subscribe, rate, review, do all that good stuff as we keep the great offseason content coming. That's all for today's Locked On Phillies, and tomorrow, a couple more player reviews, and we're going to talk about a potential trade situation and who you would look for if the Phillies were to try and move on from Rhys Hoskins or some other players. We'll talk to you tomorrow on the next Locked On Phillies.